Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm going to be doing Courtney Ferreter's The Self-Aware Reader Tag, which is apparently 1 year old, but I'm resurrecting it because I haven't done it. And I've been watching her channel. She seems nice, and the feed granted me the vision that was 1 year ago when this happened. So I won't tag people because I assume people have done it. But if you haven't heard of it similarly to me, you should consider yourself tagged, I think. What most draws you into a novel or story and makes you want to keep reading? Plot, characters, writing style, atmosphere, something else? Voice. For me, it's definitely voice. If you have the craft level of, spinning your yarn, generally I will keep reading. I'll read plot-driven books, I'll read character-driven books, I'll read something that seems like it doesn't have both, if it's like a interesting structural thing or meta component. For instance, Bluettes by Maggie Nelson or something that's pretty weird, but I made it through. I would say that was driven by much, and I wouldn't say it was fantastic either, but I'm willing to generally roll with the conceit or premise of a novel or book. What is a convention or trope that will immediately turn you off in your reading experience with a novel or story? Rape for plot, it's number one, Neil Stephenson. Snow Crash, Diamond Age, think I'll pass going forward. I think all of the things that I am generally not a fan of are tropes around marginalized people not being represented with respect or with due diligence. Generally, if things that are trite or overwrought or overworked or whatever are present, the book has a much more uphill battle for me in justifying the use of those things. And sometimes they do them well. What most appeals to you when reading nonfiction and makes you want to keep reading nonfiction? Probably the voice. Is it overly coached in like jargon, dialects, and like academic language and diction and stuff like that, or is it readable for whatever? I don't like that term because it means basically nothing, but does it have a good voice? Does it present in a way that respects the person that it wants to ostensibly get to read it? Because I've read a lot of verso books lately, well, not a lot, like 3 or 4, where it's all coached in academic stuff, yet it is presented as for the people in the commons and stuff like that, which seems asinine. What is a convention or trope in nonfiction that will turn you off in your reading experience? Malcolm Gladwell, the driving a narrative or a point of view that is both inherently contradictory in some places, or wants to subjectively take into account a specific issue to which they are not educated and privy to, not really their place to speak on. They can't speak intelligently about the issue, yet they are articulating a framework of that argument. And then they, of course, disavow the fact that people will read into their text what they are actually saying and say it. Like Malcolm Gladwell is always like, oh, it's just the start of a conversation, right? Like people should get that. It just gets people starting to talk about the issue, when really the entire text is presented as if he is right about everything, even though it's contradictory. Lots of stuff doesn't make sense. He doesn't actually cite things properly either. Sometimes he cites things that are completely discredited. And all of this is mixed into his sort of, the reader should be smart enough to figure all this stuff out. Yeah, we're talking about readers who take the Da Vinci Code as nonfiction. So maybe you should do more due diligence as a writer of nonfiction. Would you say you read more for pleasure and enjoyment, or more to learn and exercise your brain? Probably entertainment these days with COVID and all that happening. It is absolutely a defense mechanism for me to go into escapism territory, but I generally ping pong around. As soon as I have spoons, space, whatever you want to call it, bandwidth to take on more chunky or real world problems, non-escapist type stuff, then I do so. Which type of books are you likely to rate more highly and enjoy more overall? Brain candy, pleasure, enjoyment books, or brain protein, learning, exercise books? I try to let the book dictate to me what its intentions are, and then I basically try to rate it as if it succeeds or not. And so, I don't know, I think it's more likely that an enjoyable experience will get more latitude in the rating, but not necessarily. I've rated things that are just 3 stars and then highly recommended it to people. I think it barely succeeds as a book. It doesn't exceed my expectations, yet that's all I'm asking of it as well. So it just depends. I've also rated things that exceeded my expectations that were academic and whatnot, so I'm not sure. Do you have a sense early on of whether or not the book you're reading will be a 5-star read or a book you will really like? Has a book ever surprised you in this regard? Absolutely. On both fronts, I guess. Fingersmith, for instance, I was just reading. I thought it was going to be a 5-star read. It fumbled the ending a little bit for me. I think it could be severely truncated and preserve all of the necessary plot beats that were charted, and it would be a much more enjoyable experience because the narrative tension was resolved and then it tried to be like obfuscated, maybe as in a sense to like try to build up anticipation, which didn't work for me. A book has surprised me in both ways, where I expected to be 2 stars or 3 stars and then it exceeded it. Apples Never Fall, the video on that you can check out. I expected to be commercial fiction, not very good. It probably worked in its favor that I had such a low expectation of it, because it was easy for me to think of it in terms of exceeding expectations wise. But at the same time, at the craft level, I think I articulated in that video quite well, or as well as I can, what that book did to exceed the expectations that it built into the story and how kind of smart it was at a craft level. But I've definitely seen people say that they didn't think it succeeded, so who knows? Considering books that you've rated 5 stars in the past, or if you don't rate them, then books you really loved, do you think you would feel the same way about them now? Why or why not? I doubt it. I think rereading books would change things fairly significantly. For instance, every year if I read 400 to 500 to 600 books, the expectations that I have for a book and what I see craft-wise, my perceptions of the book and my critical thinking around them, the tropes that I'm familiar with, greatly change. So I expect that my opinion of things would change, especially if it's like a mystery or something. You already know the ending. There's only so much pleasure I get out of consuming a mystery I know the ending of, because I go to them specifically for my brain to solve them. It's automatically where it goes. So it depends on the book, and I definitely single out some books to be reread. And lastly, tag people. So like I said, if you feel like doing the tag, I expect you to do it now. But it is a year-old tag, so probably I'm very late to the party.